was preparing my presentation, they asked me, make it a sort of geology flavored talk for this workshop. And unfortunately, my geology knowledge goes to like an 8th grader. So I tried my best to learn, but if I miss something, it's just, because I'm not that deep knowledgeable on geology. But so we're going to talk about geothermal, and I think Nick has gone through a good overview of the transition on CCUS and hydrogen and geothermal minerals, but there is a very big piece missing here, and that's the geothermal energy, which it's really getting highlighted and getting big, and there's a lot of potential, both in the U.S. in general and also in the Oklahoma. And part of the talk today, I wasn't sure, how much background the audience have on this geothermal energy. So the beginning of the talk is more like a broad background and some opportunities in sedimentary basins. And then we go through a project very unique to Oklahoma, and we will discuss a little bit about that. So just starting talking about the geothermal. If you look at this this graphic, you can see, and this is from Department of Energy, it just shows a wide diversity of geothermal applications. And many people, when they hear geothermal, they just think of electricity, but it's honestly goes beyond, electricity. And you can see on this graphic, so you have in the shallow part, it's the heat pumps, and it's pretty mature technology. We have been having a heat pump, since more than 100 years ago, and it's been working very well for small residential applications, small let's say space heating. So but it's been widely used in many places. We have places in Oklahoma, they are using heat pumps, and then as you're moving to deeper, so you have the hydrothermal resources, and this is pretty much the bulk of geothermal, being active in mostly the volcanic areas, or the hot spots of geothermal, because you don't want to go deep, so you have seen wells maybe 2 to 3 kilometers, in places that are hot and producing geothermal energy, feeding it to either flash or binary power plant, for electricity, places like Hawaii and and other hot spots. And then you have a new concept that's been explored recently. It's called the EGS, which is the Enhanced Geothermal System, and this has been going around for years, and mostly sponsored by Department of Energy. So they have a site in Utah called Forge, and I'm sure some of you have heard of that. And they have been pumping some funding, to commercialize technology. And basically, the idea is not very complicated. You just have a production well, injection well, and you just circulate, fluid into a network of fracture system, and then you have to fracture also this type of rocks to increase the permeability for the maximum heat that you can harvest, and then you produce from the production well. And this is has not been commercialized yet, even though they see a big potentials of 10 to 20 or 50 megawatts of electricity to be produced, but it's not been commercialized. And then in this domain, you also have a new concept, is the applications from the hydrocarbon beds for geothermal production, which I'm going to talk about it later in the slides. But on the right side, again, the diversity is wide in terms of using the geothermal. So you can use for anything from farm applications, greenhouses. It's been very successfully applied for the heating, for food processing, cementing. Even it goes beyond just the conventional applications. They're also thinking for applications like hydrogen production. So you could just combo it, with other renewables. So we talked about, some of the diversity and opportunities, So what are the challenges? The big thing, stopping geothermal energy to become big is the cost. So you can imagine, most of our drilling happening in hard granite, and it's very costly. So it's, the rate of penetration in granites is at minimum, 50% less than, what you can get in oil and gas. And you can see in this chart again, it's just, from also Department of Energy, showing, the sort of basically the risks compared to, the sort of cost. And you can see it's very high risk at the beginning and very high cost also, both in the exploration phase and also the drilling part of it. There are also other things going around, in terms of the equipment, the logging. I mean, we don't have any logs going beyond 200 C, I mean, we have some, but it's not just working. We don't have cement, that is working at that temperature, drilling fluids, fiber optics. It's all, some limitations over there. But the nice thing about geothermal, compared to a lot of other renewables, it's just, it doesn't get much space at the surface. And I mean, there's nothing against the wind and solar, and they are perfect, they are good energies. But if you look at this chart, in terms of, the space per gigawatt, and you can see, geothermal is getting the less space, so the maximum thing you can see that surface is a bunch of wellhead and maybe, a small power plant that's, going around 24/7, is not impacted by whether it's windy or not, it's just going to work as we are producing oil and gas. And that just gives an advantage to be a base load compared to what you see in the wind and solar. So why this so good? Why is not that big? Again, looking at some of the numbers, if you look at the left hand on this graphic, this is from basically U.S. electricity generations from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, and you can see the projection for different types of energy. And you can see the projection for wind, solar is big, for hydroelectric is big, but for geothermal, the projection is 2%. So basically, now we are about 1.8% in the US, and based on the current projection, it's just going to be 2%. So basically, it's nothing, compared to the other types of, renewables that we have. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to stay like this, because there is huge investments going on different geothermal applications, not only the direct use, but also for, deep super hot drilling, which nowadays, they can go to several miles, more than, 8 miles drilling to be able to harvest more energy from it. So based on this prediction and the current prospect, the geothermal is not going to get big. However, there are some ideas or discussions, how to make this big. And part of the reason is the geothermal is limited to Western Hemisphere, like Nevada or California right now having, electricity from geothermal, but it's not that big in Midwest or East Coast. So some of the ideas around making geothermal bigger is just go beyond the igneous rock, because most of this geothermal is, in hard granites, and nobody have commercialized, or let's say, mass scale production of geothermal in the Sedimentary Basin. And it's very attractive to look at it from different perspectives. Number one is drilling is much faster, easier right now. Based on some knowledge I have, we can drill between 1,500 to 2,000 feet per day in Oklahoma. It's much not different in Texas or other places. So we know that we have the know-how in terms of the technology, so that can be very fast. So in fact, it's taking an average 50, 60 days to drill a geothermal well, in igneous rocks. It may take, a couple of weeks over if you make it in the Sedimentary Basin. You have basically better permeability. We have a lot of sands, carbonates, with a very nice permeability compared to what they find in granite. Even the fracking is not easy. So right now we're just learning how to frack the granites, what they do in the Forge, Utah. But if you come back to Sedimentary Basin, you have all these case studies to look at, hundreds of or thousands of wells, we know, even we have a good fracking story to say in high temperature wells, there are a lot of shale basins that are hot, or, even if you go to Gulf of Mexico, we have fracked a lot of hot wells. So this stimulation and rich know-how, I think, is going to help. And people are talking about this, that if you want to take geothermal to scale, that's one of the ways to do it. Just go beyond what you see in, only the Western Hemisphere, and try to just be bold and big, in Midwest, in Oklahoma, in Texas. And in fact, they're starting to do it in Texas. A lot of companies now having plans to drill, next year, and I'm sure there are going to be some very nice case studies to be presented, in the next few years. So the other thing that is missing from this puzzle is that how much energy we are using for direct use. So you don't need to only generate electricity and use it. If you look at this chart, this is from National Renewable Energy Lab, and it came out last year, and you can see the percentage of energy that's used for space heating, for water heating, for air conditioning, for lighting, refrigerator. And based on the numbers, as more than 65% of our energy is used only for space and water heating. And honestly, for space and water heating, you don't need that much of, let's say, temperature to do that. With a little bit of temperature, you can easily, try to balance, the temperature and try to heat, and even you can cool your place. So if you build it down to sort of, applications for geothermal, and we just go beyond let's say the hottest spots, you can, target the depths, or you can target the temperatures that are good or suitable enough for, a direct use or a space heating. So for instance, a lot of oil and gas wells goes, easily to depths of several thousand feet. The temperature is, you can easily get 100 F, 120 F, 150 F in some places, which is, suitable for this type of application. And then if you look at this chart, I'm sure you have seen this in many places. And for instance, the temperature at 4.5 kilometer and temperature at 10 kilometer. So if you just want to say, okay, I'm targeting, 300 Fahrenheit, 400 Fahrenheit temperature for geothermal, these are only the spots that you may want to go and look for geothermal. But if you just be thinking of direct use, pretty much all the US is open to you. So you can see there are, even in Oklahoma, you can get a very nice temperature. Texas Gulf Coast. There are even some hot spots, in Haynesville, as you know, there are a lot of hot wells. There are in Tuscaloosa shale. Gulf Coast, it's awesome. It's just having a lot of infrastructure to support the geothermal. And we have also some case studies for geothermal drilling in Gulf Coast. So these are very nice areas that, people are starting to look at in terms of mapping and exploration and, trying to target to drill. And the other thing, as I mentioned earlier, this is the basically average porosity that you can see in a lot of these plays, So permeability porosity is something naturally we have in many of the sedimentary basin, and it's going to, sort of help in the scaling of the geothermal and, reducing your cost in the long term. So even for the opportunities is not limited to the US. In the global, there is wide network of sedimentary basin. There's a very good temperature. So for instance, this is a map of the thermal gradient in 3 kilometer depths. And you can see, a lot of places, from Europe, Africa, South Africa, they have a good commercial temperature range that can be used for applications of geothermal energy production. And they are in fact doing it, if and there are a lot of case studies in Europe that have been doing it. In Africa, there are some countries ahead of the curve. So this is already happening, but this is not at a scale to change that 2% that we talked about. So so people have talked about this, and I may be repeating this, but I mean, everybody's saying, if geothermal is going to get big, it's the only way is the oil and gas industry comes into play. Basically, there are a lot of advantages. One, we are used to large investment capital, high risk, the management skills. We have drilled $100 million wells. I don't think, why can't we just drill some of this hard geothermal wells, so it can be easily done. In fact, some of the companies were investing in geothermal, a decade ago, but they pull out for, commercial reasons. Now they are getting back into it. It's very nice to see why this thing's happening, but it's just showing, we have the know-how and all the capital and, the skills to do this. We also have the assets, the pipelines that can be used. There are miles of pipelines, thousands of miles of pipelines in Midwest that can be used for a lot of this geothermal, at least for direct use, application. There's also opportunities that geothermal can play with, both for hydrogen production and also for storage. So imagine, on one side, you can do all three if you plan it, so you can use the geothermal to produce the green hydrogen at scale, and then sort of store that in the suitable formation. And the last thing that I'm probably going to talk in the rest of this presentation is repurposing opportunities. And as part of the project that we are trying to do to reuse the oil and gas wells, and I go into depths that why this is going to be big and what are the potentials for that. So so the idea for repurposing is, there are a lot of retired oil and gas wells that we already have, and the numbers are increasing every day. I mean, you drive from here to, I don't know, 5 miles, you're going to see tens of these wells. You go to a lot of other places, in Texas, in Pennsylvania, in California, you're going to see these wells sitting in the backyard of the people's houses. They're close to churches, houses, farms, distribution centers, anywhere that energy is going to be used. And honestly, we are going to spend a lot of money to plug and abandon these wells. So right now, it's getting a big issue in terms of, some of these wells that are going to leak methane, and you have to, as soon as possible, to plug in them. There are also big fields that you will find, tens of these wells. And honestly, the temperature for many of these wells goes beyond what is good for geothermal. So in terms of direct use application, you don't need much temperature that, you need to go deep. It's just what we have in the oil and gas is suitable for that. So this is just a chart that you can see in different places. And there are different numbers people talk about. Some places they say it's more than 1 million. EPA says between 2 to 3 million type of wells. And this is the total wells that includes the orphaned, and wells that are abundant, and also inactive wells. And I'm going to talk about, which type of these wells are suitable for this application. The other thing is many of these wells are close to the population centers. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people living, in fact, if you go to Los Angeles, there are thousands of these wells, and there are literally less than 100 feet from somewhere that you can use this energy. And the numbers are not getting down, especially in places that are drilling more, like, Permian, Texas. You're going to see this inventory is going to get bigger and bigger. And if you find a commercial way to do this, I think it can go to scale. So this is just, another map from EPA showing, and this is sort of, I guess, a few years old, location of some of these wells that they have. And then this is a map on the right is from the Washington Post showing, the locations for the current wells. And when I'm talking about the current wells, these wells, you know, you need to think of P&A in them in the next decades or so. And, you know, having a commercial applications for repurposing is going to be nice because a lot of these wells are good quality, you know, in terms of modern well construction, modern, you know, completion, that's going to be good for application in the geothermal. So, so some of the general benefits that we think going to be there is, on average, you're going to spend, you know, hundreds of $1,000s for P&A. So why don't you just reuse that for the retrofitting these wells? So it's not going to cost you more if you try to make them for direct use. So for instance, this $5 billion, you know, money that's available from federal funds, some of that can be used for repurposing application. It can extend the life of assets, you know, it can create revenue for well owners, landowners. There can be some models that works, you know, win-win between the well owners and the landowners that, you know, you can benefit from a percentage of, let's say, geothermal production for decades. Some community benefits in terms of, you know, getting these assets back to the community. With the stability of the grid, you know, right now, a lot of places, it's becoming very unstable with shutting down all the power plants, you know, with the costs going up for natural gas. So you're having an additional energy there. In the remote areas, I think it's going to be a very nice component. And everybody also talked about the ESG. So I think for oil and gas industry, that can be a very nice component, you know, to come up with this geothermal from the purpose of, you know, the ESG. I know some people disagree about it, but it's just, you know, I think it's a very good, let's say, renewable component that oil and gas can do. So, so a lot of people talk about problems with the orphan wells and, you know, some of these, you know, abandoned wells that they don't have a good quality, and we agree. We think that, you know, there's a reason orphan wells are called orphan because of nobody has data about them. And we think that number one criteria with some of these wells is their casing and the cement integrity. So basically, this is a different application. It's not just going to be for oil and gas. You're going to have a heat loads, and your casing and cement should be good. And of that 3 million wells that I told you, you know, maybe a large percentage not available for this, but there is still a good chunk of them that can be good suitable for you know, geothermal. And then you have basically access to pipelines. So the wells that are close to, let's say, population centers, and I'm going to go through the case study that we have showing, you know, typical case study like us are very suitable for this. And then it can be a combo, you know, so direct use can be most of these wells we applied for, but you can also have electricity from some of these wells in the hot areas. And there are some case studies for that, you know, showing this is, it's commercial. So let me talk about a little bit about our project. So this is sort of a proposal we made to U.S. Department of Energy last year. And they sort of liked the idea to fund it. And the well sites and the project location is in the city of Tuttle, Oklahoma. So it's about 30 miles from here. And there are actually 4 wells that we found in the area that are close to 3 schools. So there are 4 wells close to schools within a mile. And these wells are having, you know, different spacing and different distance. And they're also having good quality in terms of, you know, the casing and cement integrity data that we chose for this. And the idea is to basically reuse these 4 wells that are currently inactive for geothermal and take the energy to the schools that are nearby. So in terms of techno-economic, everything looks very good on the paper in terms of, you know, it's doable. And we think that, you know, with the good distance from the end users, that's pretty commercial, you know, to go and demonstrate the feasibility of this project. So this is just showing the sort of aerial map of the well site. So you can see, there's a nice creek going on between one of the wells and the three of the wells. So well 1 and well 4, have the longest spacings, around 1,700 feet, and well 2 and well 3 are less than 300 feet. And we're thinking of, using a combination of more than one injection or multiple injection, multiple production for maximizing energy. And the nice thing about here, this location, is that this is pretty much open farmland that for the pipeline transportation, it's going to be much easier in terms of having just one landowner to discuss and, negotiate for, for the future energy transportation. So the concept that we are trying to use here is not very complicated. It's going to be a direct use, semi-closed loop type application. So basically, these wells are completed at the depths of between 10,000 to 12,000 feet. They have been producing oil from Mississippian and Hunter formations. So for the geothermal applications, we're thinking of going above a couple of thousand feet, and we find a very nice formation having good porosity and permeability, and we have done some simulations that shows that it's has a good potential for geothermal applications. So what we are thinking to do is use one for injecting cold fluid, and then sort of produce through the formation, and then heat it up, the fluid, and then comes back to surface, and then feed to the heat exchanger to optimize, or let's say increase the heat efficiency, and then get it back to the schools. Now, there are a lot of details that's going to happen, and why once we start doing this project. But at this stage, the idea is to first use the 2 wells at the beginning, and then later on, use or add more wells to the production of energy. So there's a video of the project just showing, the location and the wells, so you can, have a better idea of that. So, I mean, there have been some media news that we are going to use orphan abundant wells, but I mean, we try to clear it up. No, it's not orphan or abundant wells. It's inactive wells, because there's a huge difference. Some of these crappy wells that, that they don't have a quality. These are, 3 of the wells actually drilled in 2002, 3, and 5. One of them is older, 1985. And then we looked at the casing bond, cement bond log, and casing integrity. I mean, they have a very good quality for this, because a lot of people, sort of coming back that, this is not going to work. But, if you have a good quality well, I don't see why it's not going to work, because it's just going to be a one-on-one injection and production, from this. So the other thing is the, I mean, there are seismicity risks that people talk about, this injection, and we've been working with OGS and Nick discussing, what would be those type of risks. But with the lower injection volume that we are thinking, the seismicity, we hypothesizing that seismicity is going to be very low risk compared to, you know, what other numbers we have in, you know, in other parts of Oklahoma in the past. So we have looked at some of these risks and, you know, feasibility, and what we're trying to do now is to go deeper in terms of the demonstration and you know, making sure that everything is going to work on. We're going to have a meeting with Oklahoma Corporate Commission, you know, to discuss with them in terms of the permitting process, and, you know, how to, and this is the first time somebody's doing this in Oklahoma. So everything is so new, and even no regulation exists in the state, you know, for this. So we are coming with a lot of different barriers, you know, at the start of the project. So the nice part of this is a lot of the students are excited about this. More than 1,600 students from this school is going to benefit. We have done a techno-economic in terms of it's going to reduce the cost, you know. So I'm just going to go to, I have only 2 minutes to talk about this. So we kicked off this last month, and a lot of people in this room were attending this. And right now we are in the workover plan preparation, and we hope to have this field test start in 2023 for this project. So I don't think I have much concluding remarks other than, you know, Oklahoma has a huge potential for geothermal, not only from repurposing, because there are a lot of wells that we have, but also for a lot of other formations we can drill for energy. We can even go think of deeper formations for, you know, for a larger scale application. And just want to thank OGS for inviting me here, and, you know, the Blue Cedar Energy, the operator that donated the wells to us, U.S. Department of Energy for funding, and also, you know, the other partners in this project. So I'm happy to, you know, talk about it more later or chat with you, each of you. But that's pretty much the general highlight about this.